What if the most dangerous weapon in history was not a gun, not an army, not a machine, but a mind? Not a loud mind, not an obviously violent one, but a quiet, focused, deeply convinced mind. The kind that doesn't question itself. The kind that believes it is right no matter what. Hello and welcome to English with Ryan, Chapter 1. The Mind That Changed Millions. Now imagine this. One person begins with an idea, just a thought. Simple, clear. It doesn't look dangerous at first. In fact, it might even sound reasonable. People hear it. Some agree. Some ignore it. Some don't think about it at all. But the person doesn't stop. They repeat the idea. Again, and again, and again. Not loudly at first. Just consistently. Slowly, something begins to change. The idea spreads. It moves from one person to another. It becomes familiar. And when something becomes familiar, it starts to feel true. This is how influence begins. Not with force, but with belief. Because the most dangerous minds are not the ones that destroy immediately. They are the ones that shape how others think. They don't need to control actions directly. They change the way people see the world. And once that changes, everything else follows. History has shown this again and again. One person, one idea, millions affected. But here is the question most people never ask. What makes a mind dangerous? Is it intelligence? No. Is it power? Not at the beginning. Is it violence? Not always. The real danger comes from something else. Certainty. A mind that never doubts itself. A mind that rejects all other perspectives. A mind that believes its idea is more important than reality. Because when someone stops questioning their own thinking, they stop learning, they stop listening, they stop adjusting. And from that moment, every decision they make becomes stronger, more extreme, more certain. At first, it may not look serious. Just strong opinions, clear beliefs, confident statements. But over time, those beliefs turn into identity. And identity turns into action. This is where things begin to change. Because actions influenced by unchallenged beliefs can grow quickly. They can spread. They can affect people who don't even realize they are being influenced. And by the time the impact becomes visible, it is often too late to stop easily. This is not just a story about one person. It is a story about thinking, about how ideas grow, about how influence works, and about how something that begins quietly can shape the world in ways no one expected. So before you continue listening, consider this. What ideas do you believe without question? And what happens if they are wrong? Chapter 2. How a Dangerous Mind Begins. No one is born with a dangerous mind. There is no moment at birth where someone is already set on a path that will influence millions in harmful ways. Instead, it begins quietly. Over time, shaped by experiences, environment, and repeated thoughts. At the beginning, everything looks normal. A person grows up like anyone else. They observe the world. They learn from family, school, and society. They form opinions based on what they see and hear. Nothing seems unusual, but small patterns begin to form. A negative experience, a feeling of rejection, a moment of failure. On their own, these moments are not dangerous. Everyone experiences them. But what matters is how they are understood. Some people see difficulty and learn from it. Others begin to interpret it differently. They start asking questions like, why is this happening to me? Who is responsible for this? At first, these questions are natural, but over time, the answers can become simplified. Instead of seeing complexity, the mind begins to look for clear causes. It becomes easier to believe that problems come from specific people, specific groups, or specific systems. This creates a sense of direction, but not always a correct one. When someone repeats the same explanation again and again, it becomes stronger in their mind. It starts to feel true, even if it is not based on full understanding. This is how belief begins. not from careful thinking, but from repeated interpretation. The mind starts to filter information. It accepts what supports the belief. It rejects what challenges it. Slowly, a pattern forms. The person no longer sees the world as it is. They see it through their belief. At this stage, the change is still internal. Nothing dramatic has happened yet, but something important is developing. Certainty. And certainty, when built on incomplete or incorrect ideas, can become dangerous, because once someone feels certain, they stop questioning. They stop exploring other perspectives. They stop asking, "What if I'm wrong?" Instead, they begin to build their identity around the belief. This is how the world works. This is the truth. This is who I am. And once a belief becomes identity, it becomes harder to change. Because now, questioning the belief feels like questioning the self. What started as a simple way of understanding the world has now become a fixed structure. Stable, clear, but limited. And from this point forward, every new experience is shaped by that structure. The mind is no longer open. It is focused. And that focus, if not examined, can lead in directions the person never fully intended, but will continue to follow anyway. Chapter 3. Once a belief becomes strong enough, it begins to shape everything. Not just thoughts, not just opinions, but actions. At this stage, the mind no longer asks, "Is this true?" It asks, "How do I prove this is true?" That small change is important, because now, the person is no longer searching for understanding. They are searching for confirmation. Every piece of information is filtered. If it supports the belief, it is accepted quickly. If it challenges the belief, it is ignored, rejected, or explained away. Over time, this creates a closed system, a way of thinking that protects itself. And inside that system, the person feels certain, confident, even powerful, because doubt is gone. But without doubt, there is no balance. Belief begins to connect with identity. It is no longer just an idea. It becomes part of who the person is. This is what I believe becomes. This is who I am. And once that happens, changing the belief feels like losing a part of yourself. So, the mind resists, strongly. At the same time, emotion begins to grow. Beliefs are no longer neutral. They become connected to feelings, anger, pride, fear, or purpose. These emotions give energy to the belief. They make it feel alive. And when belief and emotion combine, they become harder to control. The person becomes more active. They speak more. They share their ideas. They try to influence others. Not always aggressively. Sometimes calmly. Sometimes confidently. But always with certainty. And certainty can be convincing. People are often drawn to those who sound sure, even if the idea itself is incomplete, even if it is wrong, because confidence creates trust, and trust allows ideas to spread. The person begins to feel something new, validation. Others are listening. Others are agreeing. This reinforces the belief even more. Now, it is not just internal, it is external, supported, repeated, strengthened. At this point, the belief has power, not because it is true, but because it is believed. And belief, when shared by many, can become reality in people's minds. This is where influence begins to grow, because once a belief reaches others, it starts to multiply. One mind becomes many, and many minds, thinking in the same direction, can create movement, not always immediately, but steadily, quietly. And once that movement begins, it becomes harder to stop, because now it is no longer just one person thinking. It is a group, a shared belief, a shared identity. And when belief reaches that level, it no longer stays as thought. It prepares to become action. Chapter 4. Influence over people. When belief becomes strong, the next step is influence. Not control, not force, influence. And influence does not begin with power. It begins with communication. The person starts to speak in a way that connects with others, not through complex ideas, but through simple, clear messages, words that are easy to understand, sentences that are easy to remember. This is important because people do not follow complexity. They follow clarity. The message is repeated again and again and again. At first, it may seem unnecessary, but repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates comfort. When people hear the same idea many times, it begins to feel normal, even if it wasn't normal before. Emotion is also used. Facts can inform, but emotions move people. The message is connected to feelings, fear, hope, anger, pride. These emotions make the idea stronger. They make people feel involved, not just informed, and when people feel something, they are more likely to act. The person also understands something else. People want direction. In times of confusion, uncertainty, or frustration, people look for answers. They want someone to explain what is happening. They want someone to offer a path forward. So the message becomes more than information. It becomes guidance. This is the problem. This is the reason. This is what we should do. Clear, direct, confident. And confidence builds trust, even when the idea is not fully correct, even when it ignores complexity, because certainty feels stronger than doubt. The person also begins to create a group, not just individuals who agree, but a shared identity. We believe this. We see the truth. We are different. This creates connection. People no longer feel alone in their thinking. They feel part of something larger. And once people feel part of a group, they are more likely to stay committed, even when questions appear, even when doubt begins. Because leaving the belief now means leaving the group, and that is harder. Over time, influence grows. More people listen. More people repeat the message. The idea spreads beyond the original source. At this point, the person no longer needs to speak constantly. Others speak for them. The belief continues on its own. And that is where influence becomes powerful, because it is no longer controlled by one voice. It is carried by many. And when many people begin to think in the same way, the line between belief and reality starts to blur. What was once just an idea now begins to shape how people see the world and how they choose to act within it. Chapter 5. When ideas become actions. At some point, belief is no longer just something people think. It becomes something they do. This shift is often quiet at first. Small actions, simple behaviors. People start to change how they speak, how they react, how they make decisions. The belief begins to guide their daily life. And because the belief feels true, the actions feel justified. No one stops to question, because from inside the belief, everything makes sense. The group becomes more active. They share the same ideas. They support each other. They repeat the same messages. What once felt like individual thinking is now collective movement. And movement creates momentum. Momentum is powerful, because once people start acting together, it becomes harder to slow down. Each action reinforces the belief. Each decision strengthens the identity. This is what we believe. This is what we do. The connection between thought and action becomes direct. There is no longer a pause between them. And this is where things begin to change at a larger scale. Decisions are made that affect more than just individuals. They affect groups, communities, systems. The belief starts shaping reality, not because it is true, but because people act as if it is. And when enough people act on the same belief, the consequences become visible. At first, they may seem small. Changes in behavior, changes in communication, changes in priorities. But over time, the effects grow. Actions become stronger, more defined, more difficult to reverse. Because now, the belief is not just an idea, it is a system of behavior. People begin to defend it, not just with words, but with actions. Because challenging the belief now feels like a threat. Not just to ideas, but to identity. And when identity is involved, Reactions become stronger, more emotional, more intense. At this stage, something important is lost. Distance, the ability to step back and observe, to question, to pause. Instead, everything moves forward, faster, more certain, more committed, and the person who started the idea may no longer fully control it, because now the belief exists in many minds, each one acting, each one reinforcing the others. This is the point where ideas become reality, not in theory, but in action. And once actions begin at this level, the impact spreads beyond intention, beyond control, because actions create consequences. And consequences once started do not always stop easily. They continue, they grow, and they shape a world that is now influenced not just by one mind, but by many, moving in the same direction. Chapter 6. The Point of No Return. There comes a moment when everything goes too far. Not suddenly, not with a clear signal, but gradually until one day, there is no easy way back. By this stage, the belief has already spread. The actions have already begun. The group is already moving in one direction. What once felt like a choice now feels like a path that cannot be changed. This is the point of no return. The person at the center still believes they are right. In fact, they believe it more than ever, because every action taken, every result seen, every person who follows it all reinforces the same idea. I was right. We are right. And when that belief becomes absolute, doubt disappears completely. But without doubt, there is no correction. Mistakes are no longer seen as mistakes. They are seen as necessary. Opposition is no longer seen as disagreement. It is seen as a threat. At this point, the mind becomes closed. Completely, new information is rejected automatically. Different perspectives are ignored or attacked. The system of belief protects itself from anything that could weaken it, and the group follows, because they have invested too much to turn back. They have acted on the belief. They have defended it. They have built part of their identity around it. To question it now would mean admitting something difficult, that they might be wrong, and that is not easy. So they continue, even when consequences become visible, even when the results are harmful, even when reality begins to show clear signs of conflict with the belief. They continue, because stopping feels harder than moving forward. This is what makes the situation dangerous. Not just the belief itself, but the inability to change it. The person at the center is no longer guiding the movement carefully. They are driving it forward with certainty. And the group is no longer thinking independently. They are moving together, at the same speed, in the same direction, without pause. At this point, control becomes an illusion, because what started as one idea is now a system. And systems are harder to stop than individuals. The consequences grow, not always immediately, but steadily. Each action leads to another. Each decision builds on the last, until the impact becomes too large to ignore. And yet, even then, the belief remains, because the most dangerous minds are not the ones that make mistakes. They are the ones that cannot see them. And when a mind reaches that point, change is no longer easy. It becomes something much more difficult, and sometimes too late. Chapter 7. The Lesson Understanding Dangerous Thinking. After everything unfolds, after the belief spreads, after actions create real consequences, one question remains. How did this happen? Not just in history, but in the human mind, because what we see at the end, the damage, the impact, the scale, is only the result. The real story began much earlier, in something much quieter, thinking. The most dangerous mind is not always the loudest. It is not always the most aggressive. It is often the most certain, the one that stops questioning, the one that believes it has already found the truth. This is where the lesson begins. Dangerous thinking does not appear suddenly. It grows when questions disappear. When someone stops asking, "What if I'm wrong? What am I missing? Is there another way to see this?" These questions are simple. But they protect the mind because they keep it open, flexible, able to adjust. Without them, thinking becomes fixed, and fixed thinking, when combined with strong belief and influence, becomes powerful in the wrong way. Another lesson is about awareness, not just of others, but of ourselves. It is easy to look at history and think, that could never be me. I would never believe something like that. But every mind has the same basic structure. We all form beliefs. We all repeat ideas. We all look for certainty. The difference is not in who can be influenced. It is in who chooses to question, who chooses to pause, who chooses to examine their own thinking before acting on it. Because influence does not only come from outside, it also comes from within. The stories we tell ourselves, the ideas we repeat in our own minds, the assumptions we never test. These shape how we see the world, and if we are not careful, they can limit us or lead us in the wrong direction. The final lesson is simple, but not easy. Think slowly, question regularly, listen to different perspectives, not to agree with everything, but to understand more, because understanding creates balance, and balance prevents extremes. A dangerous mind is not powerful because it is intelligent. It is powerful because it is unchecked, and the only way to prevent that is awareness, not just of history, but of how we think every day, because the most important influence you will ever experience is your own mind, and the safest way to protect it is to never stop questioning it.